video, I'm going to cover 4 things: high histamine foods to avoid, low histamine foods to eat instead, one type of foods that trigger histamine that are often forgotten, and number 4, things that you can do so you don't get stuck on a low histamine diet forever. So let's get started. My name is Noor Zibde. I am an integrative and functional dietitian, and I help people overcome digestive conditions like IBS, inflammatory bowel disease, SIBO, and others. And oftentimes, histamine is very connected to the gut, and histamine is a conversation I'm having with my patients and clients all the time, and I want to share this information with you today. So let's get started. So histamine is a chemical produced by immune cells when they sense a foreign invader. The mast cells are going to produce histamine, and other immune cells will produce other immune compounds when they sense that there is a foreign invader in the body. And that invader can be pathogens or microbes. They can be environmental triggers like pollen or dust or others, or they can be food, such as food sensitivities. So histamine is actually not a bad compound. It's not the enemy. We need it to fight those pathogens. It helps protect us. We also need histamine for hydrochloric acid production in the stomach, which is needed to support digestion. We also need histamine for proper contractions in the gut, for proper motility, and in the uterus. And so histamine is an important compound in the body. It's not the enemy, but where the problem lies is when we have too much histamine being produced, higher and faster than our ability to clear it outside the body. And that's when we start to have histamine intolerance symptoms, such as digestive conditions, skin rashes or hives or itching, brain fog, headache, increased heart rate, low blood pressure, redness, and other histamine symptoms. In this video, I'm going to cover food and diet strategies to help you lower histamine load, but in another video that I'll be sharing in the description, I'm going to focus on all the reasons that you have more histamine in your body and all the things that you can do about them so that you don't stay on a low histamine diet forever. So make sure you click on that video once you're done with this one. High histamine foods that you need to avoid. There's a bunch of them, so pause this video as I'm talking and take some notes. Number 1, anything that is aged, cured, or fermented. So the first thing to think about is alcohol. All types of alcohol are going to be histamine triggers. Vinegar, other fermented beverages like kefir or kombucha, fermented vegetables like sauerkraut and kimchi, pickled carrots and other vegetables, olives, aged cheeses such as cheddar cheese or Swiss cheese and any of the hard ones that come in like blocks or shredded. Yogurt is high in histamine as well too. Aged, cured, smoked, fermented meats. So that includes deli meat, even nitrate and nitrite free. The nitrites are not the problem, it is the aging that's a problem. That also includes smoked salmon, sausage, pepperoni, salami, and these kinds of meats. And also don't forget in this category is the canned version of low histamine foods. So canned green beans are also going to be high in histamine. Number 2, these produce. So tomato, spinach, eggplant, banana, and avocado. These contain histamine and they also make your body produce histamine. I know not everybody will react to all of them to the same degree, but it's important when you're trying to follow a low histamine diet that you take all of these out of your diet. Number 3 is leftovers. You see, histamine develops in food as bacteria take an amino acid called histidine and they convert it to histamine. So the longer protein foods sit in the fridge or on the counter, the more opportunity for histamine to build up. So for example, if you buy chicken or beef from the grocery store and you leave it in your fridge for a day or two to cook it, histamine is going to build up. Or if you cook it the same day, but then you eat leftovers the 4th day, histamine is going to build up in the same food. So take a moment to think, are there times when you were okay with a meal the first time, but then 3 or 4 days later you ate the leftovers and you're not feeling okay eating it? That could be because of histamine buildup. You want to cook as soon as you get the food from the grocery store, and then if you like to cook in batches on the weekend or you don't have time to cook fresh every day, freeze leftovers. So the same day you cook, once it cools off a little bit, put it in glass containers in a portion that you would typically eat. If you cooked a lot of chicken breasts, for example, store them in 5 or 6 ounce or whatever your typical portion is in the freezer, label them, and then you can heat individual servings when you need them. Number 4, slow and long cooked foods. The type of food that goes into this category is bone broth, even collagen peptides and collagen proteins. You may have heard that bone broth is helpful for healing the gut, which is great. It does give us certain amino acids that are helpful, but the long cooking process causes histamine to build up just like leftovers. So initially, you may want to take bone broth out while you try to figure out what foods are okay with you and which ones are not. Now, you can still make stock, so you can get the bones from the chicken or the beef and cook them with the aromatic vegetables for an hour, and you can still use that in your cooking, but you don't want the long and extended cooking periods. That's where the histamine is going to build up. Number 5, it's dried fruit. So that includes dates, apricots, prunes, figs, all of the dried fruit, as well as dried meats like beef jerky. Number 6 is shellfish. So that's shrimp, scallop, lobster, clams, oysters, and other types of shellfish. And when it comes to fish, they're usually okay, except for tuna, sardines, and anchovies. So I would also be careful with those and take those out of the diet. Number 7, certain foods that make your body release histamine. So you've got foods that contain histamine and then foods that release histamine. So in this category is citrus fruits such as oranges and clementines, as well as most berries like raspberry and strawberry and pineapple and papaya. Number 8 is chocolate. So chocolate contains histamine and makes your body release histamine. So I find that a lot of people react to chocolate, and it's one of the foods that we have to give up until we figure out what's going on, and then we can bring chocolate back. And unfortunately, dark chocolate is more concentrated in chocolate. So dark chocolate, even though it's healthier and full of antioxidants, is also going to be high in histamine. So that's got to go as well. Number 9 is nuts. I find the biggest ones with my patients are walnuts, pecans, peanuts, and pistachios sometimes. I may allow other ones, but try to avoid these 4. Number 10 is legumes and pulses. So the biggest one is soy, but sometimes chickpeas and lentils can create a problem. Of course, everyone is individual. And number 11, 3 things that actually block the DAO enzyme: alcohol, energy drinks, and tea, which includes black tea, green tea, and matcha. So these don't contain histamine, except for alcohol. It does contain histamine, we talked about that. But these beverages are going to block the DAO enzyme that helps metabolize and clear histamine in the gut. So if you're drinking green tea a lot during the day, it has the potential to block the enzyme that we need to clear and get rid of histamine. So you're doing something that's working against the diet. Let's take a deep breath and talk about the things that you can eat, because I know it can be very frustrating to have a long list of things that you can't have anymore and you are lost and overwhelmed. So number 1, protein is actually not bad. You can eat fresh, unadulterated proteins such as chicken or different kinds of fish or beef or turkey, as long as you know how to process it and handle it properly. So if you are buying raw meats, get to know your local butcher. Some people are very sensitive. They have to know exactly when the meat was processed, and so that they can buy it the same day and freeze it the same day. Some people have a little bit of flexibility. So when you go to the grocery store, look at the date of processing and make sure you get the freshest tray. And sometimes that's in the back, and they do that to rotate their inventory. So make sure you get the freshest as possible. Get to know your local butcher so that you know when they get their deliveries and you go shopping that day. When you get the meat at home, you either freeze immediately or you cook the same day. Some people are okay with having leftovers for the next day. Some people, that's even too much histamine builds up. So keep in mind that processing and storage and handling of the meat is going to make a difference. Now, when it comes to fish, I actually recommend that you get frozen fish, because the fish is typically frozen the minute it is caught, much faster. So if you live in an area where there is fresh fish, maybe that's an exception for you. But for a lot of people who live in areas where fresh fish is not available and the fish has to be on a truck for a couple of days before it makes it to your grocery store, it is going to have more histamine than the frozen. So frozen options are really your best bet in many times. Number 2, low histamine vegetables, except for the ones that I mentioned, which are spinach, tomato, mushroom, and eggplant. All of the vegetables are low in histamine. Those help actually the body clear histamine. So these are kale and cabbage, broccoli, collard greens, and also things like carrots, pumpkins, and butternut squash, and bell peppers. Now, some of them may have other compounds and chemicals, so I'm not going to go there. But zucchini, cucumber, you have a lot of options, beets, radishes. And I want you to pay attention to pea sprouts. So the pea sprouts are going to have natural DAO enzyme, so you can use those in salads. Just make sure you wash properly, or you can use those in smoothies. Number 3, low histamine fruit. There are options. So you can eat an apple or a pear, watermelon, or grapes, honeydew, and cantaloupe. Blueberries, I find among all berries, blueberries are okay if you keep it to a 1/4 cup portion. Now, if you have digestive issues like stomach pain and bloating or SIBO or IBS, I know some of those foods are also high in FODMAPs, so they're usually off limits. If you want to combine both diets, you can eat a little bit of grapes, you can eat a little bit of blueberries, and you can eat cantaloupe and honeydew, and these should be okay for both the low FODMAP and the low histamine diet. Number 5, grains are generally low in histamine. So I would recommend that you avoid gluten because gluten is inflammatory. It can contribute to leaky gut. It can trigger the immune system and other pathways. So I highly recommend that you get off gluten while you're trying to follow a low histamine diet and identify your triggers. What you can use instead is quinoa, gluten-free oats, rice, buckwheat, millet, but of course everyone is different. There are people who can't tolerate grains because of SIBO or problems with digestion, so you are going to have to see what works for you. Number 6 is fats. What are we going to cook with? So you can use coconut oil, olive oil, butter, and ghee, and tallow as well. Number 7, seeds. So seeds tend to be lower in histamine than nuts. The best ones to choose from are sesame or like tahini sauce. You can also use pumpkin seeds or chia seeds and hemp seeds. Sunflower, I find it's 50-50. Some people can do well with it, some people don't. So you're also going to have to see how it goes. When it comes to nuts, it's generally recommended to avoid, but I find that some people are able to do macadamia and almonds. So if you keep it in a small portion, with almonds you have to be careful to not eat almond milk and almond flour and almond butter, and you can see this way like the almond adds up, and so maybe it becomes a problem for some people. Number 8, if you can tolerate dairy, there are options that are low in histamine, and these are going to be the fresh ones. So you may be able to drink milk, or you may be able to have cottage cheese or ricotta or fresh mozzarella. Now these contain lactose, so for some people that's an issue or a problem. You may want to try lactose-free options. So there are some options here, but it's also going to depend on your own sensitivities and intolerances. Number 10, what can you drink? Of course we can drink water, but other beverages that are low in histamine are coffee, as long as it doesn't cause acid reflux or nervous energy or increased heart rate or diarrhea. It should be low in histamine and should be okay. And then you have a lot of options when it comes to herbal teas. So you can try chamomile, lavender, peppermint, ginger. You can make a tea from turmeric. You can have dandelion tea, holy basil. And I also like nettle leaf tea because it actually helps calm the immune cells that produce a lot of histamine. There you go, a whole lot of foods that you can eat while you are on a low histamine diet. Just a quick reminder, if you like this content so far, make sure that you hit the like button and subscribe, because that helps this content be shared with more people who are looking for it and who need it. So thanks a lot. Now we're going to talk about the third thing, which is a certain type of foods that are often forgotten and nobody really talks about them as much when it comes to histamine intolerance, which are your own individual food sensitivities. So you see the immune system is going to release histamine and other immune compounds when it senses a foreign invader. And that may be a pathogen, as we said, or an environmental trigger, but it can also be any food. Even healthy foods can trigger a histamine response in the body. So for example, a low histamine food such as carrots, if the immune system lost the ability to tolerate it and consider it safe and let it pass, if it starts to tag it as a foreign invader, the immune cells will produce histamine and other immune compounds to safe foods that are, such as carrots or turmeric or parsley or things that are allowed on these lists. This is important for you to know because you can go crazy thinking like, what am I doing wrong? Like, why am I not getting any results? You may ask yourself, are you not following the diet properly? But it's not you. You may be following the diet to the T properly, but you have developed other food sensitivities that are keeping your immune system hyperactive. So it could be histamine or even other immune compounds released as a result. How do you know your own individual food sensitivities? 2 ways really. You can try to keep a food log, and of course you want to stick with a low histamine diet. You can try to keep a food log and see if there are certain patterns. Do you get a certain symptom 6 hours or 12 hours or 1 hour after eating a certain food. That would require thorough food logging and analysis. The other thing, which is what I use with my clients, is we test for food sensitivities, because that gets us the information that we need faster, and so we can apply it faster in order to identify these food sensitivities and incorporate that along with a low histamine plan. If this is something you're interested in, we can work with people in the US and Canada, so check out the link in the description for more information on that. Final point is, how do you not get stuck on a low histamine diet? The thing is, low histamine diet is restrictive. It is difficult. It can prevent social life. It can feel lonely, and it can be frustrating, let alone it can cause nutrient deficiencies because you're skipping a lot of foods that are high in prebiotics and antioxidants and probiotics that you actually need to support your good gut flora. Use the low histamine diet short term for 2 to 3 weeks in order to identify, like, is this my problem or not? So if you feel better on a low histamine diet, now we got to ask the question, why is your body producing a lot of histamine? Are there any pathogens? Is your gut leaky? Do you have food sensitivities? Do you have nutrient deficiencies? And then we want to ask, why is your body not clearing the histamine properly? Because the enzymes that we need to clear histamine require what we call methylation, or require a proper healthy gut. So there's so many questions that we have to ask in order to make sure we're getting that right balance, that you're not producing too much and then you're clearing what you're producing so that you keep histamine in check. I am going to be sharing a video in the description on how to overcome histamine in the long term so that you don't get stuck on a low histamine diet, so make sure you check that out. I hope you found this information helpful. I would love to hear from you. Have you tried a low histamine diet? Did it work? What questions do you have for me? I'll come back and check on the comments and answer any questions. And if you haven't already done so, make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.